listening to Mile High Insiders with Nick Kendell and Luke Patterson. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com for all things Broncos. Now, it's time to find out what's going on behind the walls of UC Health Training Center.
Alrighty, folks, give it a second to breathe. Guys, welcome in on this fine Saturday evening. I am Nick Kendell along with Luke Patterson, and this is the Mile High Insiders. Luke, before we kick it off even, gotta ask you, it's been a little bit, man. How are you doing?
Doing good, buddy. I'm excited to have you back. I know you're in the process of moving, and that's fun, man, especially when you're moving states. I have not had that opportunity yet, but you know, Nick, the Broncos are off today, but we're not. We got a lot we want to talk about, and possibly, well, actually the most important position in all of professional sports, the quarterback position, Drew Lock. So pumped to have you back, buddy, and let's have a great show.
Yep, we make the trek from Iowa to Seattle starting tomorrow. It's going to be a long one. I'm going to stop in the Tetons for a little bit. If you guys have any pet-friendly activities around that area, shoot them my way. I would appreciate that. But guys, this is the Mile High Insiders podcast. I am your host today, along with Luke Patterson. Make sure you find us on Twitter at Luke Patterson LP and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Subscribe to our show wherever you listen to these podcasts and leave us a rating. Really important for those YouTube listeners. Like, subscribe, and share. That way you get a notification when new episodes are coming. It's not just us. It's the Huddle Up podcast. It's Building the Broncos. It's the Dove Valley Deep Divers. So that helps us a heck of a lot. Also, make sure you check out our merch store. That helps a lot as well. Luke should be getting a hat in here soon. I'm waiting until I get the new address, so that'll be a little bit easier for me. Like Luke said before we started going here, one less thing to pack. A little bit triggered by that word, but I'm doing okay. And guys, make sure you're following us at Mile High Huddle as well. The season's right around the corner, and if you do that, you're not going to miss any of our great content over there. And Mile High Huddle is an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. So let's kick this off. We have a lot to talk about today. Obviously, there's a lot going on, but one of my favorite writers that covers the Broncos, I know there's sometimes a little bit of rivalry between different sources and different people, and a little bit of, I'll just call it some pettiness. But one of my favorite writers covering the Broncos for years has been Jeff Legwold, and he just wrote a piece for ESPN where he did the ceiling and the floor for the Denver Broncos. So I'm just going to read it first. That way the chat has it, you have it, and we can kind of just give our opinions on this. So Jeff Legwold for ESPN used to be the president of Pro Football Writers of America Association as well. So definitely a guy. He's been around the block. He has the Broncos ceiling at 10-6. He has the floor at 5-11. And he says the biggest variable is the first month. Sure, Drew Lock is in his first season as the starting quarterback, and the Broncos have plenty of work to do to set things in the offensive line. But how this season looks overall might hinge on whether Denver does far more in weeks 1 through 4 than it did last year. Broncos started 0-4 last year, scored 16 or fewer points 3 times in those 4 games, and had 0 sacks on defense in the first 3 games. I think everybody remembers that. Several of the Broncos players have already said how important it is for them to find a way to be far more effective in those early days. They feel as if the team showed up. They feel as if the team showed its potential even before the upgrades on offense in the draft, with a 4-1 finish over the last 5 games to start, or last 5 games in 2019. So obviously Broncos started really poorly last year. Joe Flacco brought 0 energy, but I think the biggest interesting thing for me is that's man, Jeff, I respect the heck out of Jeff. I got to say that again, but 10-6 to 5-11. I mean, you're not making much. Yeah. Bold indeed.
Sure. Yeah, it's crazy, man. And just like you said, Jeff is somebody that I respect, I look up to, I admire. I've been reading his work for years, one of the ESPN senior writers. Gotten to meet Jeff a couple of times, and it's definitely one of those fan-struck moments where he's one of my favorite writers. Okay, let's just call it like it is. So go read Jeff Legwold. He's an awesome dude. But yeah, man, that's quite the range. I mean, it's either feast or famine for the Denver Broncos in the eyes of the seasoned reporter, and I tend to believe him. I mean, I think with the current circumstances that surround the world and seeing football try to transform and ramp up to where it should be, especially with these ramp ups of training camp, you're starting to see some injuries in training camp right now, notably Todd Davis, right? We're all hoping the best for Todd because he's the best guy ever, and the Broncos really, really need him. But as you start to see some of these injuries come to fruition a little bit, it starts to temper some expectations, something John Elway talked about a little bit. So, I think it's definitely a solid range when you look at really bad and really good for the Broncos. But I will tell you this, Nick, it completely depends on Drew Lock. It really does. Now, while there are all kinds of other variables that we can discuss and debate, including the offensive line, his young wide receiver room, the tight ends, things like that. I mean, this guy is the guy. And I'm kind of over the fact of calling him a kid at this point, because you're the man. I understand you've only played a handful of games, but you're supposed to take this next step. So I'm looking for a lot of maturity out of Drew Lock. I'm already starting to hear some things that I really like from training camp regarding his leadership qualities, how he goes about his day-to-day. But it definitely rests on the shoulders of Denver's, hopefully, franchise quarterback, Drew Lock.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about that. But first, guys, the chat, we got to say hello. Ernie Mays, almost always one of the first guys coming in here. Denver
up,
Broncos,
Ernie?
Greatest pods, greatest fans, greatest everything. Love you, Ernie. Always good to see you in here. Always one of the first in there. He's waiting for us. I love it. Stuart McNair, he's talking about Drew Lock's numbers here. Good to see you, Stu.
Ooh, Stu.
That's a pretty good indication.
Stu gave me goosebumps right there with that one, man. I like it, Stu.
Toy Mafia is here. Good to see you. We got Chase Wellner. Buwana always in the chat here. We got Peter Middleton. Hi, y'all. How you doing, Peter? And he's smiling at Buwana. Always good to see. Holden Adams. Holden, how you doing? What's up, Broncos country? That is a sick graphic there, dude. Noah Fant. He's one of the most aesthetically pleasing players on the Broncos. Like the number 87 and just how big he is. I mean, how jacked he is too right now. Oh, Noah Fant better have a big year. Oh, I'm going to bust Buwana's balls all the time if he's really good. We got Madungus coming in here. Andy Rock Lovato. James Campbell's in the house. ZW Designs. Robert Skinner. Hello, Yog. Stephen Baumgartner. Good to see you. So a lot of the
Steve-O.
David Schlosser.
We got a lot of folks with us here on Saturday night that want to talk about the quarterback, man. Imagine that. The most important position in all of sports. Drew Lock. Well, he's got that job, Nick. So I'm pumped to see all of you guys on with us tonight, man. Gives me goosebumps talking about that. Having Nick back, I'm pumped. John on the ones and twos. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And be sure to hit that like button. Go give us a quick review, too, over on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And let us know what you think so we can keep giving you lots of great work. I also want to give a quick shout out. Look at this fly background we got going right now with the SI Mile High Huddle. I got to give a shout out to my boy Adam Fry, who designed not only the MHI logo, but is doing a little bit of work for us right now too. So huge shout out to Adam. Things are looking dope, man. I love it.
And Kevin giving me a hard time busting my balls about Chad busting my balls about saying busting balls. So that's enough ball busting conversation there. Well, we'll see if he's. I mean, I think they said busting balls in the Bible. I think that was Leviticus. No, that's just blasphemous. Now I'll back off from that one.
Well, it's a football podcast, and balls at camp are there more or less. But yeah, we got to get away from this before I get in trouble too.
But yeah, no, Drew Lock. I think that is the reason that this variance is so high. And while we're giving Jeff kind of a hard time that it's a wide range here, I mean, gosh, 5-11, that's a 6-game swing. But it's just because Drew Lock is such an unknown. I know that everybody's riding high. I mean, Drew Lock says everything right and he acts the right way. I mean, when you hear him talk, he just sounds like a franchise guy. But there was another piece that just came out where a bunch of executives, football executives, were asked who is the best second-year quarterback going forward. And Drew Lock came in third, very close to Gardner Minshew with Daniel Jones, and number one, Kyler Murray, which I would argue Kyler Murray is number one, but I'd have Drew Lock number two. Not a big Daniel Jones guy.
Gardner Minshew? What?
Yeah. I don't know. But there's a lot of people that don't trust Drew Lock's processing ability and accuracy. So that makes me want to pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of those teams are probably basing that still on all the work they did on him in college, where there were questions. I mean, there's a reason he fell to the second round. But I think that unknown is the reason you see this big air bar. That said, I think the air bar, I gave him a hard time, but if Drew Lock is as good as I think he can be this season and the team around him, I mean, the Broncos have a top 10 defense, I say, even as it is. Unless there's two catastrophic injuries, then I think the Broncos are going to have a top 10 defense. And I think there's enough weapons on the offense. I think you could honestly bump them up to, what do you have them at, a 10-win ceiling? I think that's low. I think you can say a 12-win ceiling. I mean, we're talking about if everything goes right. Like that's a ceiling. I'm thinking about like a bell curve. Like most likely this year, the Broncos finishing. Sure. I think Vegas has them at 8.5 wins. That's probably exactly where I'd have them. Yeah. But if everything goes right, if Drew Lock clicks, And these guys are all good. And the Vic Fangio's second-year defense, I mean, you got a really good defensive line. I think 12 wins is honestly a ceiling. Now, the odds of that happening, maybe 1 in 100 to 5 in 100, kind of that area. But it's the ceiling. I think they have that ceiling. If everything clicks, I see a 12-win team. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. I'm typically the realist, but we're talking ceiling.
Yeah, man. I love the optimism. I love it. And the one thing that you brought up is you're looking at things without injuries, best case scenario for everything. And I like that because that's something that a lot of people don't bring into the conversation when they make their projections or when they start making picks and stuff like that. But for me, I like to wait just till the end of training camp so I know which roster I'm dealing with. Yeah. This year might be a little different because preseason games used to matter for me, especially breaking down some of the film and trying to look at some of these younger guys on the team and even some of the vets that are trying to make other teams. But I completely agree with you, man. I think Drew Lock, he does say the right things and he presents himself the right way, and I buy it. I don't think it's all just phony nonsense. I do think it's who he is. I don't think he needs to take lessons from Seth or Patrick or Eric over there in Broncos PR and how to speak to the media. The guy's awesome at doing that already. But thank you, Terry, coming in with the $1 super chat. Appreciate that, Terry. Terry Randall, one of our regulars. So appreciate it so much, Terry. Hope you're doing well. Love the sign. But one thing I saw today as I was reviewing some practice film yesterday that Steve Atwater was going over with former Broncos quarterback Peyton Manning. One small thing that I saw, Nick, that I really liked. Drew Lock went over and picked up his own ball instead of waiting for someone else to throw him a ball to give to the center. He's doing these little things where it's just like, okay, I understand I only have X amount of time in training camp right now. I need to cut some corners where I can, even if it means me bending over and walking 5 yards to go get a ball. I know that sounds silly, but when you're an NFL quarterback, Nick, guys get spoiled. They get spoiled in camp, and sometimes they get spoiled in the season, and then things just never come to fruition. So when I see those little things like that, that tells me Drew Lock is for real, and I buy who he is. I buy his personality, and I buy the leadership.
Yeah, I buy him and everything he brings. Like when he talks, I feel like he is authentic. I think the players really do buy into him. But unfortunately in the NFL, not unfortunately, but in the NFL, that can only take you so far until you have to prove it on the field. You know, like he's doing all the right things. He's saying the right things. Players are buying him around him. But if he isn't the guy and they're not winning with him, they won't turn on him. But, you know, they'll know whether or not he's the guy or not, you know. So like Aaron Rodgers, pretty well known as a guy who is not beloved in the locker room a little bit, can be a little bit of his own person. But when he was his peak, I mean, it didn't matter, you know. So while I love having the quarterback that's the rah-rah guy, teams buying into him, etc., that can only take you so far until there has to be like a threshold you cross on the field, and that we just don't know yet. So that's something that also I want to bring this up. I don't know. I know we're not allowed to say the C word, but with everything going on with the quarterbacks being separated as much as they are going to be, I'm curious what kind of effect that's going to have on Lock's presence with the team. I mean, if he's not in the locker room, again, I want to say it again, busting balls with the players, with his teammates, you know, messing around in the locker room, having fun. Yeah. How much is that going to affect his ability to communicate with them, for them to buy in, just to have that type of relationship where, honestly, that might be one of the things I'm most excited about with Locke heading into the season.
One of the cool things that the Broncos do is they put out some silly videos every training camp. Last year, what they do, Vic Fangio shut it down for a gelato truck, right, and a field day, right, and stuff like that. Well, I just watched a little video of Brandon McManus dressing up like a referee and going out there and messing with some of the players a little bit. They're trying to keep it light. They're trying to, you know, break things up a little bit so these guys can have a little bit of fun, because I can only imagine the environment that they're in over there. I mean, it is so pressure filled because time is not a luxury that they have. But you're exactly right, Nick. You can't just go up there and be a rah-rah guy and say all the right things and joke around with people if you're not winning. And as you sent me Jeff Legwold's article today, I started thinking about that. And you know, Broncos fans, they're the most educated fan base in all of the NFL. They're also very spoiled, and I include myself in that. We have had tremendous quarterback play in our lifetimes, okay, with John Elway and then going to Peyton Manning and then going over to, even I'd argue, Jake Plummer was a great player. Now, he's not a Hall of Fame player, but he's a player I never truly appreciated who he was until he was gone. And that's something that Drew Lock has already embraced, but he's got to win, Nick. That's just it. And he's got to be able to take responsibility for some losses as well. Now, it's not uncommon for teams to lose back-to-back games, but I have a real problem seeing the Broncos go 3 games in a row of losing and Drew Lock not trying to turn the tide of some sort or allowing that to happen. Yeah, the offense is young. We get it. But the defense isn't. You said it before, the defense should be top 10. They absolutely should be top 10. They're the highest paid defense in the league. So, yeah, man, I absolutely think that Drew Lock needs to step his game up and start playing well and start winning games. And then when things don't go well, because they're not going to go well, Nick, they're going to lose games this year. He's going to throw interceptions this year. He's going to throw pick sixes this year. I'm sorry. All right. For the biggest Drew Lock fans in the world, Drew is going to have struggles this year. And you know what? That's okay, because no quarterback has ever gone without struggles and had an NFL career with success. So you just got to embrace some of those struggles that are coming, some of those growing pains, and they're coming for Drew, and they're even happening in training camp right now. I mean, you hear some of the interceptions and stuff like that, and it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I would rather he throw those interceptions in camp. But yeah, man, you got to temper expectations a little bit. I hear you, John. But on the other hand, dude, Drew, everyone says you're the real deal, man. It's time to win.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Yeah, and I don't want to say this name too often because who knows what kind of riffraff we will find in the thank you, Terry, that we will find in the comment section.
Spear Fund, use the force, Luke, cool hand. Luke, $5 super chat. Terry Randall, I appreciate you so much. Nick is getting ready to make someone mad. Nick, let me hear it.
The comment that I was going to make is that, you know, you can have all the intangibles in the world, but the name that comes to mind if you just don't have it on the field, it's Tim Tebow. Just some of the throws and running a passing offense in today's NFL, some people will live and die by that. They could have run a antiquated offense with Tim Tebow, a little bit more of that power option running. But again, all the charisma, all the intangibles, leadership, the work ethic, blah, blah, blah. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. So that's just, we'll wait and see in that regard. Manny Weiss coming in here. Good luck with the job search, Nick. Thank you, Manny. That is with, again, the C word going on, as well as everybody in Seattle is like on vacation right now. It's really annoying because they have like, it's rainy most of the season. And then July, August, September, that's when it's like beautiful, clear, not rainy. Everybody takes their vacation. So like all places are like shut down and bogged down. And so it's just like, somebody give me some money. I can do stuff. Just give me some money. So we honestly, thank you, Manny, very much for the donation.
It's good to see you, Manny. I know we haven't seen you in a little bit, man. So I appreciate you riding with us here on a Saturday night at 6 p.m. on the Mile High Insiders. And be sure to check out all of our podcasts. Now's a good time to plug those guys too, because Nick's on another podcast with Carl Doomer on building the Broncos. We've got the Dove Valley Deep Divers. I always screw that one up. That's the biggest tongue tire in the world with Eric Trickle and Lance Sanderson. Then you got the big boys with Chad Jensen and Zach Kelberman killing it on the Huddle Up. So be sure to go check out all our podcasts and give us a rating, and appreciate the donation. But yeah, man, you're exactly right. Tebow, I could not stand when the Broncos were playing Tebow. It just didn't make sense to me. It felt like let's just call it what it was. It was a college offense in the NFL, and it sort of worked, I guess. I mean, it ultimately got him Peyton Manning, but yeah, man, he's got the ability. Drew Lock has the ability. Does he need to clean up his footwork? Yes, he needs to clean up his footwork. Does he not need to throw off the back foot? Yes. You know, all these things he needs to fix and develop, but the guy can throw a ball and Tim Tebow couldn't at all. So I'm definitely feeling good about that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And we got an interesting one to hear from Talking Ball. New to podcasting, was wondering if you had any advice for growing my channel. Love the vids, by the way. Love your channel. Thank you very much. It's always good to see people who are in the industry reaching out to us, because it means that we must be doing something right if they're asking us. I think the biggest thing I can give you to as far as your advice is make sure you're doing stuff that you want to do. Otherwise, it just doesn't come off authentic. Like when I came to Chad originally, like, Chad, I really want to do a Broncos draft podcast. He's like, are people going to listen to that? It's like, Chad, I understand that we're doing it for the listeners, but when I was doing it then, I was like, nobody could listen. This is what I'm passionate about. I want to do it. Yeah. And it just grew from there. And because I was so passionate about it, and that was like my thing, or I guess Carl and my thing, it grew. And I mean, it was obviously a passion project. This is what it was. So make sure you're doing stuff that you want to do that's authentic, and just be yourself. I think those are the biggest things. It's you want to be fair, and there's obviously different niches you can occupy, because like what we do is very different than say what Brandon Perna does as far as the type of entertainment, the information that you get. But you want to be yourself. You want to find your niche, and just if you do good work, people will come and follow and listen. So you'll be noticed eventually. I mean, Chad just found me. I was writing on Facebook, just giving Eric Trickle actually a hard time about one of his drafts. Like, I don't agree with this take, blah, blah, blah. And Chad's like, hey, do you write for anybody? I was like, no, I'm just doing this for fun.
Nice.
And he's like, do you want to write for me?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do that. So just be yourself.
That's great advice, Nick. And that's a great question. I really appreciate that question. I've heard that question before too. And the biggest piece of advice I could give to you is take advice. So many times people ask me and even my mentors that I'm learning from, how do I do this? How do I do what you do? And they tell them it's real simple. There's no formula, reps. It's all about reps. Nick, you know this. Anything from writing to podcasting to anything we do in this life, it's all about just doing it over and over. And yeah, you're going to have a little bit of nerves when you come onto the camera the first time, but you know what? You're in your home environment. You're talking about something you want to talk about. So when you ask for help and people tell you what to do, go do it, because they know, and that will show them that you're listening to them, and they will continue to start offering you advice without you asking. So I'd encourage anybody to, chase their dream. And if you want a podcast, start a podcast.
Yes. There are a lot of podcasts out there, but, hopefully that'll be. And Stewie C in the comments here, painful to watch because we want to acknowledge the physical tools from the Houston Texans game. The thing is, that's a sample size of one. We obviously have Drew Lock's. I put almost more weight on his Missouri tape, honestly, than what I do in the Denver tape, because it was kind of very small sample size, weird end of the season. You kind of got much more of a feel of what Drew Lock's tools are watching him at Missouri, especially. I feel like there was a 4-game stretch his senior year and the bowl game where you just saw all the tools. There are things that he needs to polish. He's a little bit, because he did play through his senior year, he's a little bit older than some quarterbacks in his age bracket, but high ceiling. I really think he's a high ceiling. I think worst case scenario for Drew Lock is that he's Andy Dalton. And if that's a worst case scenario, obviously you want better than Andy Dalton. But if you can get Andy Dalton on a rookie contract, the Bengals were making the playoffs every year, and that was with John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin led Ravens and Steelers. So that was Marvin Lewis could never get him over the hump, and hopefully you have a better team around him than Andy Dalton had. But if you can get Andy Dalton rookie contract for the next 3 years on this Broncos team, you got a chance to make the playoffs and make some noise. I really believe that. So that's my floor for Locke. I think he can be Andy Dalton-esque, but I think he can Matt Stafford. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah, and Matt Stafford with the arm. Matt Stafford's arm strength is just freaking unbelievable. And
Stafford might have a little better arm. I think Locke might have a little bit better.
And he's more accurate, I think, than Stafford is. I already think he's more accurate. I really do. I really do. I feel like this year he's going to be much more accurate. And one of my things with the Houston games too, and I appreciate you bringing that up and appreciate the comment, I like to look at the Houston game as Drew Lock at his best. Well, we haven't seen Drew Lock at his worst yet, and it's coming, right? Everybody's got to have a terrible game, and that's what I want to see. I want to see what it's like. Exactly. Peter coming in here. Peter Middleton. Appreciate the comment. And Boana, John on the 1s and 2s. I want to see Lock after losing 2 in a row. Will he start to sling it more or become too cautious? I think he has a strong character, so he will do fine. Well, Peter, I tend to agree with you. I want to see what he's going to look like throwing 2 picks in a row. Something tells me that Drew isn't going to stop throwing. He's not going to be the check down Charlie that Trevor Siemian was, or that backup quarterbacks tend to be. I think it's in his nature to keep going. I don't think he's going to be reckless by any means, because one thing we hear head coach Vic Fangio talk about a lot is trust. And I think right now Drew Lock is still earning Vic Fangio's trust, as is most of the players in training camp. So I wouldn't expect Drew to ever get reckless or unnerved, but I expect him to be frustrated. I expect him to be mad, disappointed, a little sad, embarrassed. Those are natural human emotions, and the quarterbacks have those too. But what I'm also hoping to see is that he accepts responsibility for some of those losses, even if it's not his fault, because that's something that great quarterbacks do too, Nick. And that will go a long way in the locker room with the defensive guys as well. Yeah,
I definitely agree with you there. We got Madungas coming and giving me a hard time. Nick, you should have just compared Tebow to Iowa. They just don't have it. Going into being an Iowa fan, if you're expecting national champions, it's not happening. But the Big Ten is within reach. Although Ohio State's really freaking good, so
yeah, I know. I can't wait to have a podcast for us to talk about tight ends. Maybe we'll do that when you're back, man, because I want to have a spirited debate with some tight ends for the Broncos right now. But right now we're talking quarterbacks, man. And
I thought you were talking draft tight ends. I was like, why do we want to do that? So
no, I want to talk.
Where my head's always at.
Broncos tight ends, man. I think we could have a great debate, and I know John's probably already looking in the back right now, like, yeah, that'd be a good show. But no, man, I'm glad everybody in Iowa. I hope everybody in Iowa is doing well. Pabby was one of our folks over there as well, one of our big listeners. So thoughts and prayers for Iowa. We got to take care of each other, and even if that's sending positive vibes to them and breaking up some of the really serious nature of some of the things you went through, I appreciate that, Mundungus, because you're able to bring a little levity to it and try to get a smirk out of somebody and try to make them laugh. So definitely want to reach our thoughts and prayers out to all of our Broncos country fans in Iowa.
And not to just pile on 2020, but everybody listening in California with the fires going on, fire tornadoes, what the heck is that? And
Colorado
too. Yeah, Colorado too.
We're burning down right now, man. It's really tough, man. The other night I had to look out. I live in the mountains, and the other night I looked out, and our whole sky is full of smoke. I mean, it's nothing we smell right now but smoke. So you're exactly right, Nick. We got to keep everybody in our thoughts and prayers.
And then the Gulf has 2 hurricanes that are supposed to hit at the same time. Like I'm ready for the aliens. Like just skip ahead. It's gonna happen. Or a super volcano in Yellowstone. Like I don't know. But back to football here. Obviously, Jeff Legwold's 5-11, 10-6. I guess let's bring it back to that. Mm-hmm. What happens to get to the 5-11? Let's say that 5-11 comes to fruition. What are the main 3, 4, 5 things that happen to make the Broncos be that bad this season? Because 5-11 is hard to see for me.
Assuming Drew Lock doesn't get hurt, because this is the whole point of the article that Leggy wrote. Yeah. So assuming Drew Lock doesn't get hurt and they go 5-11, one thing I'm immediately thinking about right now is, and we're talking about the offense only. I'm not talking about Von Miller getting hurt or Bradley Chubb or the corners or anything. The biggest thing for me when I hear that is we've got problems with our running backs. Don't know if they're fighting, if there's drama with Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon, if Philip Lindsay's upset he's not getting used as much as he should, if Melvin Gordon feels like he's getting slighted. Maybe there's a problem between those two and there's not chemistry. Also start thinking about the offensive line. Do we have injuries on the offensive line? I mean, because right now, the Broncos are trying to figure it out. They're building from the inside out. They've got their guards. They're looking for their center still, I guess. I don't know why we're wasting time.
They're fermenting their center.
I like it. They're fermenting it. Yeah. Well, to quote Troy Rank and all his great metaphors, they need to microwave his development for Lloyd Cushenberry. But no, if I think 5-11, man, I think something is just seriously wrong with the offense. I mean, I look at Pat Shurmur. Are you not utilizing guys the right way? You were brought in here to help Drew and Noah and Cortland and your running backs. And I don't know, man. It makes me sick to even talk about 5-11. It just tells me that the wheels have completely come off. And I hate to say it. Maybe you need to look for a new head coach. I mean,
probably
Vic Fangio. Yeah, Vic Fangio. I like Vic. I really do. I think Drew is going to do well going against Vic Fangio's defense, something Peyton Manning talked about yesterday, saying, look, Drew's going to be prepared because he's going against Vic's D every day. And yeah, we get it. Sometimes he's going against the 2nd and 3s also. But I don't know. Head coach Vic Fangio, he's definitely respected for what he can do on the defense, but it seems to me like he handpicked Pat Shurmur. So in essence, wouldn't this ultimately be on Vic Fangio?
I think it would. I think if the team went 5-11 this year, I'm guessing you'd have some of those, we'll call them whispers about some people a little bit with Vic Fangio rubbing them the wrong way. His old style, those would probably be getting a little bit louder. So we'll see. I mean, obviously things are great when you're winning. I'm curious to see what happens with Bill Belichick this year. If the Patriots are bad, if people are going to really, especially those new age players, kind of turn on him. That old school coaching style sometimes
what do you think about that, Nick? I want to ask you about that. It's something you and I have never talked about. I know I wasn't covering the team with this publication last year when the Jason La Canfora piece came out about Vic Fangio, but I've certainly asked around about it and stuff like that. how much weight do you put into, the old school coaching styles, kind of grouchy, not a player's coach of Vic Fangio? And how would a young, popular quarterback like Drew Lock respond to that?
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Well, I think Drew Lock's still going to put his head down and just work. Yeah, and he's going to rally around his guys and support them. I mean, every single chance that Drew Lock has to talk or say something, he says and does the right thing. So I'm not worried about that at all, especially in the PR sense. But as far as the rumors about Vic Fangio, I do think they were probably a little bit some of the people who had been there for a while and have since continued to talk. And I just won't dance around it. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders of the world, Chris Harris Jr.'s of the world. Some people were not really happy with the way things were going last season to start the year. Rightfully so. It was a pretty ugly season to start last year. But I think those are the main ones that were really talking loud, hidden at that point. There's probably some still on the team, some detractors. But that said, winning cures all. So if you have a fun-going coach and, hey, everything's great, and you're getting the tar beat out of you, at least, it's like, oh, at least I'm having fun and he's not grinding me down. But if you're getting beat up and then the coach is on your rear end as well, really not fun. So I don't have an issue with him being tough in that regard, but I can see why it would bother some players. But again, if they win, probably doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you said it, that Drew doesn't need Vic's ultimate praise to go to work. I mean, after Drew Lock's first win, when we were all super pumped after, the touchdown throw to Cortland Sutton, the one-handed catch, everything like that, Vic Fangio came out and stopped all of our optimism and said, I'm not ready to throw him in Canton just yet. And, kind of brought us back to earth. Well, that's why I like Vic Fangio. He is just constant throughout. He lost a bunch. Yeah, he's himself. He lost a bunch of weight. He's walking the field. He's not bragging, about how good he looks or he's wearing the same old sweats. He is a creature of habit, and I like it. And I'm just going to call it like I say it, dude. Football's a tough sport. And if you're looking to get mentally coddled by NFL head coaches, and you are, then one, you have the wrong head coach. And two, those people don't really exist in the NFL. This is basically for coaches, sometimes a one stop and then on to the next franchise. So don't expect Vic Fangio to have glowing compliments of Drew Lock, even when he wins games and does very well. It's just not who he is. We hear him, get criticized about talking about Vic Fangio and Bradley Chubb. Or excuse me, Vic Fangio, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, and some of their criticisms and stuff like that too. So it's just who the guy is. Don't put too much weight into it. But man, at 5-11, come on, Vic, what are we doing?
Yeah, so we got Chase Wellner coming in. Not sure how the seafood is in Iowa. LOL. Yeah, LOL indeed. But it's awesome in Seattle. I think Locke was ranked 33rd in deep pass, but do you expect a big jump this year? And that's something you were talking about earlier. I wanted to get to.
Thank you.
Yep, getting me back on track here as well. Did you see the Brett Collerman piece?
No, I did not read that. What was that about?
It's a YouTube piece. It's a video piece, but talked about Locke and just kind of how he went into a shell the final 3 games of the year. And there was deep balls to be had where he just really wasn't going for it. And I mean, I definitely saw it on tape too. He played much more conservatively, even though they were going against trash defenses of the Lions and the Raiders. I mean, absolutely, especially the secondaries, they're just trash. Those are horrible defenses. And the Broncos still played extremely conservatively on offense, and part of that was Drew Lock. But that's something that, again, I just can't answer it yet. I know it's a 5-game sample size and we saw flashes, but last year, Drew Lock going into a shell, they won. But from the passing stance or passing perspective, going into a shell, was that Drew Lock or was that Rich Scangarello?
That was Rich Scangarello, man.
That's exactly it. People covering the Broncos, maybe it's a little bit of a bias on it, but I feel like Rich Scangarello, very much the conservative side, protecting the football, protecting the defense, and that was something that Vic Fangio didn't like. So is that Drew Lock? Is that going to be something that we see still with Drew Lock this year? Because he definitely pulled it back with the training wheels on for those last few games. Or are we going to see that be expanded with Shermer? And how much of that is predicated on the offensive line? I mean, there's just
exactly.
We need football. Gosh.
Exactly. You said it. The offensive line. You said it. And that's a great question. I really appreciate that question with the deep passes and stuff like that, because what does everybody say about Drew Lock, including us? He has a great arm. Well, then why aren't you throwing the ball down the field? Well, one, you probably don't have the time. I mean, it's just one of those things where, yes, Garrett Bowles might have looked a little bit better.
Is it just me? It's still moving for me.
Are you there? Okay. We might be having a couple technical difficulties, but I'm good right now.
I'm back.
Okay, there he is. Just like VJ, we're back. So one of those things for me, man, I mean, Drew Lock, he camouflaged Garrett Bowles' weaknesses a little bit by getting rid of the ball as quick as he could. Now that you have a more deep threat, actually 2 more deep threats with Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, yeah, definitely expect Lock to be going deep, man.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Let's get some of these super chats here before we lose them. We got Mundungus coming in again. Sounds like everyone in Iowa is doing better, except the internet still dropping a little bit here in Iowa.
Mundungus, you're killing it, brother. I love it.
Any of their sports teams. Yeah, that's Cedar Rapids. A lot of Cedar Rapids is still missing power, so got to watch out for that one.
Them.
Yeah, I mean, I know people. It's been almost 2 weeks now, and they still don't have power.
Nick did the coolest thing ever. A little peek behind the curtains when he lost power. Nick went camping. So I just thought that was a brilliant move, dude. I mean, you already don't have power anyway. You're kind of camping in the city. At that point, you might as well go do a little fishing, bring the dog, your wife, and try to make the best of it, man. So, I definitely thought that was a cool idea, dude. You got to make the best of bad situations, something the Broncos are trying to do right now. So we just got done talking about Vic Fangio and whether or not how Drew Lock responds to Coach Fangio's coaching. Well, the Broncos were pretty banged up, right? So they were supposed to have a 2.5-hour practice yesterday. Instead, they got the work done in 2 hours. Coach wanted them off that last 30 minutes. So he is trying to temper some of the injuries / fatigue, frustrations, what have you, even the good days too. You don't want players getting too high on themselves either. So he's trying to balance that, something I really, really like. I think that's good for a young quarterback like Drew Lock. And not to go completely backwards, but when you look at that Jason Lockenfora piece about Vic Fangio being a grouch, look at some of the offensive coaches that aren't here anymore. Lassie Bark. That's all I'm going to say. And Nick, you hit it on the head. All players that aren't here anymore either. So definitely hearing and expecting good things from Pat Shurmur and Drew Lock, but they got to put in the work. And ultimately, we're going to know whether or not that work was put in Monday night against the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, and looks like also happy birthday to Coach Fangio.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's today or tomorrow.
It is
James,
today.
You're over the pond, but okay. Well, James, thank you for catching that for us. And we got
Thanks,
Duke
James.
coming in. Duke, good to see you. It's still just training camp, no preseason, no this, no that. It's going to be a tough year. You could just leave it at that, honestly, but chalk it up to the no word. Yeah, 2020, man. It's just
Thank you, Duke. I love it, brother.
What a crazy time to be alive.
Yeah,
we got Pabby coming in. Also, Pabby, haven't talked to you for a bit. I hope you're okay from that derecho. I know that Des Moines was hit pretty hard as well. Not like Cedar Rapids, but hit pretty darn hard. So let us know in the comment section if you are doing okay there. And James, move starts tomorrow at 6 a.m. So thoughts and prayers.
No rest for the wicked ever. Duke, just like you said, man, we get it. There's no preseason. Training camp sucks right now. Things are crazy. We completely get that. But you know what? Like I'm tired of talking about all that. Yes, we have to bring it up because there are things that affect what we're going to see on the field and eventually the product on the field. But you know what I've been seeing, these guys are working and they're working hard. I haven't heard about anybody taking, snaps off, being lazy. You haven't heard about any fights yet. I'm always really curious when the fights are going to happen because that tells me that guys are getting really tired of each other. And, I'm not looking for guys to start swinging fists or anything like that, but you hear the defensive backs chirping the receivers and stuff like that. And part of me likes to think that quarterback Drew Lock is chirping the defenders a little bit. This is a kid that likes to inspire people. And what better way to inspire an undrafted running back like Bellamy, who got some reps with the ones yesterday a little bit, than chirping at the defense and being like, hey, man, we got this. There's a bunch of old men over there on defense. We got this. We're the young guys. I like that aspect of Drew Lock's game. I like the swag that he brings to the game, something Peyton Manning picked up on. When Peyton Manning's picking up on Drew Lock's swag, that tells you he's authentic, something we talked about a little bit earlier in the show, and I like it, Nick. I really do.
Yeah, and speaking about swag, guys, go to huddleuppod.com to get your swag on, as Chad likes to say. Luke will have the hat pretty soon. He's just waiting for it in the mail. But If you go there right now, guys, you will see that the Mile High Insiders merchandise is in, and the logo is pretty damn sick. Honestly,
it's hot. It's the best. It's the best one ever. I'm just going to say it right now. I know you have another show, and so you're not contractually obligated to say that. So I'll say it for you. It's the best one ever. We got the hat out, the shirt out. Nick's exactly right. But go check out Building the Broncos. Check out the Dove Valley Deep Divers did it again. Huddle Up podcast. We got masks, coffee mugs, all kinds of great stuff. But yeah, go get some gear. I should be wearing gear by our next show, I'm hoping. I know the boss man's getting everything shipped out. So yeah, I've got a shirt coming, got a couple hats coming. Things are going to be good. I'm going to bug him about making some decals because I love decals. I'm a child. I want stickers. And yeah, so get swag on, y'all.
Yeah, and also the biggest thing you can do for us, subscribe, like, and share. Get us out there on YouTube. That can help us continue to get you our podcast, not just this one, but all our content out to you guys. That can mean a lot to us. Very helpful. And as Duke was just saying, guys, I got to get out of here a little bit early, so probably another 10 minutes or so before we get moving, just because I got packing to do still.
Before we get moving, literally, before he gets moving.
Before we literally get moving. So appreciate you guys. And I also appreciate you guys. August has been just a chaotic month for me personally and state of Iowa. So I've just not been as present. Appreciate you, Luke, and also Carl jumping in when I've needed somebody to come in and help as far as having a host on here or just anything. So really do appreciate that. It means a lot.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. That's one of the coolest things about our crew. We're able to work with different people that we've never worked with. I've gotten to work with Lance and most recently your partner, Carl. Carl's a cool cat, man. I like that guy. Carl's a gang member. I'm just going to say it right now. I love Carl.
He's a goof, man. He's the sweetest guy. But yeah, we really do appreciate you guys very much. So I guess the ceiling now. We got to get out of here before that ready. Okay, there's a good one there. Will Hamler be able to start the season?
Yeah, he should. You know what? I know that, some of the KOA guys are reporting, before training camp started. Tim Patrick's going to be a starter. Great. Tim Patrick's starting in training camp. I don't care. Who's going to be starting in the beginning of the year? I'm not so sure that Vic Fangio is going to just sign off the trust waivers and go ahead and throw the kid in. Depends on what he does in training camp. But, even if he doesn't start, expect him to play a lot. KJ Hamler's going to be playing a ton. It doesn't matter if you start. It really doesn't. As long as you produce when you're on the field for me. So should he start? Yes. Will he? I don't know.
That's a good question. We also have John coming in here now. Hey, guys, Steve Atwater said Albert I is on his A-list. I think Albert O is on his A-list. Albert O? I mean, Vic Fangio kind of busted his hiney saying you got to be blocking a little bit better to see the field. Yep. Obviously, I mean, Fanta's still the guy. Oh, yeah, good work on that article, too. I clicked that one right away.
Yeah, man. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wrote about that on milehighhuddle.com. We've got tons of writers, folks, working through the wee hours. We've got Keith in Scotland putting out Broncos stuff while I'm sleeping. So, yeah, go check out all our work over there. But, yeah, Steve Atwater saying Albert O's on his A-list. Yeah, you bet. But you know what? Like, it's still a little confusing because I've been writing about Albert O and Noah Fant, trying to figure it out. I'm still scratching my head, man. But as it relates to Drew Lock, he should be pumped, man. He should be pumped. The guy's his best buddy. Jake Butt's looking great in training camp. So the tight end position is going to be huge this year in Pat Shurmur's offense. I expect Noah Fant to do even better than he did last year. That doesn't mean that Alberto can't have success just because Noah Fant's going to be balling out. Expect the young guy to do some special things as well for his best friend, Drew Lock.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion and to see which one of those guys can fill that fullback void. Obviously, it's being phased out in this offense. They traded Janovich. It's just not as featured in this offense.
But do you need it? Yeah, do you need the fullback board or position at all? Because Andrew Beck's there, and I want to count him as tight end because they're carrying 4, right, Nick?
That's the plan, but that's the big thing. I mean, can any of those other guys play that H-back fullback position? There's been some talk of Albert O.
Yeah,
it's honestly more of a receiving position for them in there. It's a little bit more decoy. I mean, they're not running as much ISO.
Yeah, I know there's not going to be a power eye and the spread O and stuff like that.
Yeah. So you think of the fullback and you think I'm cracking their head in running, in between the A gaps. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to be as much of the situation. I mean, obviously you still have it there, but it's more about manipulating matchups, making sure that they have to put a linebacker or another guy in the box just to have somebody out there that's not as good in space. But that really, Fumagalli can play some H-back. Beck, we saw it last year playing H-back. Albert O can play H-back. Those are H-back, fullback kind of positions. So that's really going to be an interesting – It bums me out so much that I can't have preseason this year just to see where these guys are going to be utilized.
I know.
But that's one that's really interesting, and you can't have the tight end discussion without talking about that.
Yeah, and Alberto wasn't brought here for strictly the reason that he's Drew Lock's best friend. I mean, he profiles very similarly to Noah Fant. I know that's an odd thing because you're like, why do we need two Noah Fants when Noah Fant, I mean, he's got to block better too. I wrote about that last year also. I mean, they both need to block, but you know what? Let's just be real. Noah Fant doesn't have to block. He could get away with average blocking because his receiving ability is so great. But if you look at Alberto, you just can't have two tight ends that neither one of them are going to block. I mean, you got to get on it, Rook. And I expect the Rook to respond. And, you know, hopefully Drew's, his boys chirping him a little bit too, saying, hey, man, don't get our running backs killed.
Yeah, and something I have a little bit of point in contention here, and I know I've been given a little bit of hard time about the good job, John, getting that corrected in there. Thank you very much. Also, giving me a hard time, Mundungus. Heard that the Big Ten was postponed. The Hawkeyes cheered. Finally, they didn't have to show their mediocrity on TV. Well, I actually got to have a point with this one, Mundungus. Iowa was one of two programs that voted to not postpone the season. I'm not going to give my opinion on that either way, but Iowa and Nebraska were the only two that were trying to actually have the season continue in the fall. So, nice try, but I got facts on my side.
Nice. Yeah, Mundungus, I love it, man. Trying to give Nick some hell as he's moving. Good Lord.
I need it.
If I'm gonna give you some hell, I'm just gonna flat out say it. I don't know why you're trying to buy a Seattle Mariners hat and wear that around Seattle instead of that Broncos orange. I want to see Broncos orange. I can't stand the Seahawks. I've got so much beef with them from that Super Bowl still. I'm never gonna get over that. And watching that was when my daughter was born, and I was thinking, here we go. You're on the year you're born. The Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl. This is going to be great. Only to look over at my dad and say, well, man, this isn't our year. And he says, son, you're officially a Broncos fan now. You've watched them tank a Super Bowl. And I'm like, oh, ouch, Dad, ouch. So I expect bigger things. Now, I'm not saying the Broncos are going to go to the Super Bowl this year, go Big Red with the Mundungus. I got to disagree, man. I'm in Buffs country here, and I hate Nebraska. Absolutely hate them. I hate them. So, yeah, go Big Red, man. I don't know about that. N is for knowledge when it comes to Nebraska. But I don't know if I have Super Bowl expectations, Nick. I really don't. So middle of the road, I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, they're going to go 8-8 because it's a safe pick. Get me a little further in training camp. I'm just – the last thing is we're wrapping up our show. I'm so irritated with – Tim Patrick, if he's taking reps away from Jerry Jeudy. I'm so irritated with Patrick Morris and Austin Schlottman, taking reps away from Lloyd Cushenberry. And while I understand Cush needs to go ahead and, gosh, you Nebraska people are everywhere. While I understand Cush needs to get in there, and like you said, he's fermenting right now. What do you think about these reps, man? I mean, we were all really upset that Drew Lock took so much time to get into the game, and he was battling an injury and other things like that, and other quarterbacks and stuff like that. But what do you make of some of Drew Lock's rookies that are just kind of being brought in here and there? They're not really showing up in force. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother me that much. The only guy that if he wasn't getting starting reps right now that bothered me would be Jerry Jeudy, and that's not the case. Right. So, I mean, after the draft, I prefaced it, guys. I know we're really excited in the moment it happens and how these guys are going to fit, but you got to have a little bit of, I guess, depth to your expectations. Where especially the guys picked outside of the top 50, they're going to take time. So That's like with Cushenberry, with Ajim, with Ojemudia. Honestly, if none of them started this year, I think you hope Cushenberry would. But if Ajim and Ojemudia are much more depth pieces this year, and you're talking about them starting more 2021, 2022, that's probably more the plan of the third-round pick. That's just how it goes, especially at back end of the third round. So it's kind of upsetting, I guess, in regards that you'd rather have those players step up right away. And obviously you have the hype with the draft, and that's all fun and good. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that, but
I know. We love it. We love the draft, right? We get ready with the draft, and we're already saying Ojemudia's starting, and Lloyd Cushenberry starting, and KJ Hamler starting, and right now the only one that we can definitely say starting is Jerry Jeudy. So Pabby coming in. Thank you guys. Pierce, she's doing well. Pabby, we appreciate you so much. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, when we look at the ceiling for Drew Lock, it's whatever he wants it to be. It's whatever he makes it. I mean, you got to know that the hometown kid from Missouri is sick of seeing Patrick Mahomes and all of the success that he's having. He's blowing up. He's the most popular player in the NFL right now. I think that bothers Drew Lock because Drew, I get the sense from Drew, he wants to be that guy. And there's only one way to be that guy, Nick, and it's to win a Super Bowl. So while I don't think they're getting to the championship this year, playoffs are the expectation, and winning in the playoffs this year should be the ceiling for Drew Lock in this season.
I don't disagree. I just want to see what it looks like early on and then change those expectations accordingly. Weird offseason. It's so hard to really have a pulse on them. Even the people covering the team, every year you can go back and look at people's tweets from
different stuff.
The ones, it's way different, but then it always turns out to be way different than the expectation. So nobody really knows what's going to happen. And without preseason, it just makes it that much more difficult. We got Steve Mundunga still giving me a hard time.
This is the roast of Nick Kendall, everyone.
My last night in the state of Iowa, and he's going to do us like that. That's not nice.
Get him.
You know what Iowa stands for? Idiots out wandering around. Yeah, ha, ha, ha. I've heard that one before.
Mundungus, you're a savage, brother. You're an absolute savage. Again, I said it last week. He was dogging Carl, I think. Here he goes, coming again, Mundungus. I was going to make fun of the Buffs, but the amount of championships they have means I don't have to. Yeah, man, it's really weird. I was at the CU Pro Day when everything started to go down, so I got some love for my Buffs, but, man, they're in a tough spot, too. The NCAA is in a tough spot. The NFL is in a tough spot. We just got to get through it, y'all. That's just it. So I know we're starting to wrap up the show a little bit, but for me, the low with Drew Lock, I would say the floor, losing 3 games in a row. That's the worst thing that can happen to me for Drew Lock. I don't know what that does to his confidence. That tells me maybe after the first or second loss, and they're all situational based. I mean, who knows? Weird things happen in football all the time. But I would expect Drew Lock to get a rallying cry together. You see Von Miller trying to get people together for dinner and all that. I don't think it's going to happen this year. But I would expect to hear some stories about Drew Lock trying to bring the team together, especially when they struggle, because make no doubts about it. He's going to struggle. The Broncos are going to lose games, and he's throwing picks. How does he respond to that? That's the biggest thing for me.
I think the biggest low will be, let's say the offensive line never really is able to get it together. The wide receivers take a little bit of time to gel, and Drew Lock gets some sort of nagging injury. Knock on wood, everyone. But some sort of nagging injury where he can still play, but the quality goes down, whether like an ankle or something. And then like he loses mobility, and it just snowballs on him from there, and he starts to panic. He's tucking the ball in. He's not seeing guys get open, and that's just when it gets really ugly. So fingers crossed, but that's probably the low. The high, offensive line gels, offense is going well. Drew Lock takes care of the football, doesn't try to do too much, but makes the big plays when they're called for and lets the weapons just run, let those ponies run. And that's the way it goes. And just, don't do too much. He doesn't have to do too much. This isn't a roster like the Bengals, like last year. They're absolutely trash and Joe Burrow's coming in. He's got a good defense around him. He's got weapons. He's got obviously a good running back duo. I mean, there's things there for him to be successful. Don't overstep yourself, take it in stride and just be the guy, don't
be yourself.
Much, so,
Yeah, like you said, sometimes you like to watch his college tape because he is who he was in college. I mean, there's no mistake in it. It's very consistent, the mistakes that he's making in the NFL. It's very consistent, the successes that he's making in the NFL with his college film and stuff like that, too. So Nick Smoka Fund coming in from James
I'm
Campbell's
a latte guy.
As we start to wrap things up here. Yeah, man, I loved the piece. I love the energy for Drew Lock. Gary Smith coming in. My knee surgery was a success, and I'm in recovery mode. Thank y'all for the great wishes. Means a lot. Gary, I'm glad you're feeling better. Continue to take care of yourself, and thank you for tuning in. One last thing for me, man. If Drew Lock can get in, quote, the GB zone, end quote, maybe we'll be doing all right, man. I don't know. I don't want to rip up the Garrett Bulls audio and stuff like that too much, but if he could go into the GB zone, and then he'll be good to go. And he doesn't have Hall of Fame quarterbacks coming in like Garrett Bulls was talking about with left tackles. So I think he'll be good, man. Yeah,
and Kevin, this is my parents' bookcase, so that won't be going with me. But I appreciate it.
Kevin, man, Kevin coming in. Y'all are roasting on Nick. I love it. Go ahead and keep it coming because he deserves it. He's an ornery soul. And then we got Jason coming in. Iowa sucks, and I live in Des Moines. You won't miss the humidity, Nick. No, but you know what? We're all planning and hoping and counting on Nick to go out and represent Broncos country the best way I know he can in Seattle because I hate those dirty birds so much. I hate them. So I'm pumped for you to get out there. I'm pumped for you to start throwing some Broncos gear around the city. And yeah, man, we gotta flood that city with orange. We need to flood the whole country with orange.
Yeah, and if you guys know any Broncos bars in Seattle, hit me up on Twitter. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. You can find Luke on Twitter at Luke Patterson and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you're going over to milehighhuddle.com as well. Find our latest articles. Mile High Huddle is an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. Go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. Very important, guys. If you like our content here, like, subscribe, and share on YouTube. Leave us a like on Facebook. Those are the best ways to help our content reach more viewers, more people, and just help us continue to bring you these shows. You can follow the Mile High Insiders podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to these shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at MHI_football pod. For Luke, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Mile High Insiders. Folks, I'm going to be gone again next week. August has been the craziest month, honestly, of my life. But thank you so much for letting us join you today. We appreciate the heck out of y'all. Luke, you got anything for our listeners before we get out of here?
I will be rolling with y'all. I have yet to decide who I want to bring on. Got some talent all over this roster, so I'm feeling like a very powerful soul right now. But yeah, I'll be coming on Saturday. Nick's going to be coming back, folks. Just hang in there. Y'all can roast him as soon as he's settled and gets his new bookshelf set up. But no, this was a great topic, man. You sent it to us earlier, me and John, and was really pumped to start talking about Drew Lock because he's the man. And now the man needs to go win games. So for Nick Kendell, I'm Luke Patterson saying always believe in that Mile High magic.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.